Good morning, Dolphins fans. Welcome to another episode of On the FinSide here with Kat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL on Twitter, Paulus Fanatic _pick. Be sure to check out our segment as well with Nick Wooten from the Bills Wire and the USA Today. He broke down the Bills sideline, what he kind of thinks about whether or not the Bills are going to rest their starters or not for this game. But, Paul, everything's on the line here. The Bills are favored by 3 points in this game. There's a 55% chance of snow, and we know the scenarios. The Dolphins win and they're in, and what a heck of an end to a season it would be at 11-5. If they lose, they can still make the playoffs with one of three things happening. That would be the Colts losing to the Jags, the Ravens losing to the Bengals, or the Browns losing to the Steelers, who also are going to rest a lot of their starters, including Ben Roethlisberger. So everything's on the line here heading into Week 17.
It is, and you look at some of these teams, it's on paper. So let's take the Dolphins, put them over here for a second. On paper, all three of those games look like games that are going to be wins for the team that we need to lose. So Miami really needs to win and just take care of business. But here's the thing. The Steelers have thrown up a lot of stinkers the past few weeks. And I hate to say it after watching them last week, something is wrong with Ben. So the Steelers may be better with Mason Rudolph in right now with whatever the hell's going on with Ben Roethlisberger. Phillip Rivers, we've seen him what feels like 3 decades when he was with the Chargers. He is wholly capable of throwing up an absolute stinker in the weirdest moments, especially when facing a semi-decent pass rush. So if the Jags can get a pass rush on, they've already got the number 1 pick locked up. They're going to go out and have some fun. They're going to do some stupid spoiler stuff. We see it every year, so that's a possibility. And the Browns, well, what the hell's left on the Browns?
Oh, yeah. You talked about the Browns. Talked about the Colts, and then you've got the Bengals against the Ravens. And that's an interesting one because the Bengals have won the last 2 games, and they have looked good. And Brandon Allen might be one good game away from turning into one of the big stories of December.
This is true. There's a lot of question marks out there, though. So, I went with both sides on the Browns game just because the Browns have some COVID issues right now. I mean, good God.
Yeah, and sorry to cut you off there, but yeah, overall, when you look at what the Dolphins need to have happen if they lose, you've got the Browns favored by 10. You've got because the Steelers are resting their starters. You've got the Colts favored by somewhere between 12 and 14, and the Ravens favored by I think 14. The other 3 things the Dolphins need, it's very, very unlikely those things are going to happen. But if you take, we saw last week, if you take 3 very unlikely scenarios and you just need one of them to happen, the odds on that improve.
They really do, and so we can't discount if Miami loses that they're out. I mean, I know I had projected 10-6 in the playoffs. I'd prefer to be 11-5 and comfy cozy about the playoffs right now.
Sure, and to that point, this is a question that I asked on Twitter here, and stay with me, listeners here. So this is the question I asked, and it's a hypothetical. Obviously, both of these things could happen, or none of these things could happen. But here was my question. Let's say the Dolphins lose to the Bills. Let's also assume that the Colts beat the Jaguars and the Ravens beat the Bengals. They're 12-point favorites or more in those games. In these last 2 scenarios, you can only pick one of the 2, and this was my Twitter question. Would you rather have the Browns lose to the Steelers, which means the Dolphins are in the playoffs, but picking probably 8th or 9th in the NFL draft? Or on the other side, would you rather have the Texans lose more, which would mean that the Dolphins are out of the playoffs, still go 10-6 on the year, out of the playoffs, and pick 3rd overall?
That That's really a question? Because anybody that says, "Oh, I don't want the Dolphins in the playoffs so we can pick third overall," what the hell? Like, I mean, we've got a good team with a good defense and a good special teams and an offense that's finding its way. Um, that's a decent recipe for the playoffs. And God, I'll take the chance at winning it all now over like, oh, let's sit home. Like, we can still do draft talk during the playoffs. There are some great players available at number 9. There are gonna be. I expect 3 to 4 quarterbacks to go in the top 6 picks of this draft. That means somebody like Penei Sewell, probably not Penei, but just as an example, outside of the quarterback position, Micah Parsons, Kyle Pitts, Greg Rousseau, Kwity Paye, Devonta Smith, if that's who you guys are after. That's 6 guys right there, aside from the 4 quarterbacks. That's 10 picks. Any one of those guys can help this team. Let's not be a sissy and go, oh, let's go for the 3rd pick so we can sit around and overdraft a wide receiver. Come on.
So on this poll, and the reason I asked, I was a little surprised by the results. 41% in that scenario would have preferred that the Texans lose as the priority over the Browns losing. Now, I'll tell you this. I'm with you. I would also pick the Browns losing. But I would say I'm not as far along as you are on that. And here's why: is if this is a rebuilding year and the Dolphins have already done well. I disagree with you that I think that you get in the playoffs and you never know what can happen. I don't think the Dolphins win a playoff game, and if they do, I think it's a miracle with how bad the offense has been playing here over the last few weeks with a rookie quarterback. I still think this is a rebuilding year. If people don't like to hear that, I'm sorry, but that's how I feel about the team right now. I'm still happy with the team. But in that scenario, it would, and here's the consolation prize if the Dolphins miss the playoffs. They could be picking 3rd and 18th in the draft, and they've also got 2 second-round picks. And I'm not saying that to hope that Dolphins miss the playoffs, but if they do, there's still a consolation prize here, and that you get high draft picks.
Yeah, and God, it's funny. I just had the thought while you were talking. I really wish somebody could get this question in front of Omar and get it into his little brain. That way, I could watch the press conference before the game happens tomorrow, where Omar asks Brian Flores if he would prefer to win and get in the playoffs and pick 9th, or lose, be out of the playoffs, have the Texans lose and pick 3rd. Because I'd really like to see a replay of the Bengals game live during a press conference where Flores goes charging across the room at Omar. I really think it would happen at that point. But no, it's look, guys, we're used to losing. I get it. It's been a rough most of 20 years. It has. But the confidence that comes from winning. You look at last year, everybody freaked out about us winning a few games and like, oh no, we're not going to get our guy. You know what? We can get our guy. I trust Greer, McKenzie, and Marvin Allen in that front office. I trust their symbiotic relationship with Brian Flores. And I trust that with 4 picks in the top two rounds of the draft, as it stands right now, they're going to get us some good players that are going to only help and impact. And any team, any day, any team can get wiped out like the Browns are right now with COVID protocols, like the Titans did earlier this season with COVID protocols, like our backup quarterback situation with COVID protocols.
I think typically in that scenario, I lean toward, does it really matter if you're 10-6, does it matter if you go in the playoffs and lose in the first round? And my answer to that is no. I think it's more important, given the state of the franchise, given that the Dolphins are the 2nd youngest team in the NFL, given we have a rookie quarterback, I do think it is important that the Dolphins do get into the playoffs, whether they win or lose or not. And what'll blow everybody's mind, if the Dolphins win this game against Buffalo and they are the 5th seed, who do they play? Ryan Tannehill and the Tennessee Titans. That would be fun to watch. And that is actually a game where The Titans defense has been so bad this year that, and I think that the Dolphins know how to and would pressure Ryan Tannehill. Yeah, I do think they would have a shot in that game.
I do too. I mean, honestly, I think this is a team that would have a shot in any game. The interesting thing too with this, and it's just one little nugget I want to put out there, and I know a few folks have talked about this, is it's going to be critical if Miami does make the playoffs, whether or not they play Saturday or if they play on Sunday. And the reason for that is where the 10-day window falls for Ryan Fitzpatrick. The NFL is not going to schedule the game based on Ryan Fitzpatrick's availability. If it's Saturday, Fitzpatrick may not be available off the bench.
Yeah.
If it's Sunday, it is possible that Fitzpatrick is available. Obviously, he's got to clear all the COVID protocols, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he'll be in that mandatory 10-day window, I believe, on Saturday, but potentially outside of it on Sunday.
Yeah. And everybody knows by this point too that Fitzpatrick's not going to be available for that game. He not only is in the COVID protocol, but he actually has it. So that's a problem on that. But I'll tell you what, I know I am not happy Ryan Fitzpatrick has COVID. Okay, let me be very clear about that. But given the situation, it's advantageous, at least in my eyes, that there isn't that quick hook from Tua. This is it. This is the season. Okay. And I've made it clear, I already overall disagree with pulling Tua, period. I said in week 7, in week 8, when that change was made, I would rather go 8-8 with Tua than 10-6 with Ryan Fitzpatrick, based on the future of the franchise. But I have softened on that a little bit. And here's why, is because when you look at putting in your backup quarterback like Fitzpatrick, a couple of things here is typically when you pull a rookie quarterback, it's for one of two reasons, or both reasons. The quarterback is playing terrible, or the team is losing. And typically the starting quarterback and the backup quarterback don't have a very good relationship. None of those things are true in this scenario. Tua and Fitz have a great relationship. And in addition to that, Tua is mentally strong enough to be put on the bench and then be put back in, to me, without accepting or without interfering with his psyche all that much.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like this is yet another reason that Brian Flores should be coach of the year. He has taken and set up an improbable scenario that should never work on almost any team and could devastate a rookie quarterback's confidence, and turned it into something that is healthy. As goofy as it sounds to say that, it's Tua has responded well to being pulled. There's great communication going on. Fitzpatrick and Tua are using it as a real, live fire training exercise when Fitzpatrick replaces him, and I'm cool with it. I do like the fact that Tua's playing without the safety net this time, because sometimes you got to just take the training wheels off and shove the damn bike down the hill, even if the kid falls. Like you do.
Yeah,
And that's where we're at.
And Fitzpatrick's a free agent at the end of the year, and it's I don't want him back in 2021 for number one, that reason, and number two, because I mean, the guy's going to be 39 years old. I want the legend of Fitzpatrick to live on forever in the Dolphins community. I don't want it to get to the point where, okay, now he's 40 and he really can't play. I think some of that allure would go away. That's just a fan thing for me. But Paul, my other question here is, we don't know at this point if the Bills are going to play their starters at all, play them for a quarter, play them for 4 quarters. The way you look at it, I'll kick it over to you on that. I mean, do you prefer that the Bills play their starters or don't play their starters in this?
Honestly, right now, I'm okay with either. I'm more worried. So I'm going to go back to something that when I'm coaching the little, 7 to 9-year-olds, any team, any day, whoever the hell you want to play, let's go. And I know that's an old school meathead mentality in a way, but end of the day, You go out, you play your game. It's the same reason why against the Chiefs, when everybody freaked out about the idea of blitzing against Patrick Mahomes, the first thing out of my mouth was you blitz him, you play your game. You play it smartly, you do adapt to what the other team is doing, but you do not let them dictate what you do. And it's if the other team's dictating what you do, you've already lost. I want Miami to come out prepared for both and smack him in the mouth. Because guess what? If it's snowy and slushy and what have you, one of the things I've noticed about Josh Allen is when he takes off with the ball, he doesn't have the best ball security. And Miami's a team that if you watch them, they are constantly, more than any team I can recall, ripping at the ball when a ball carrier comes out. So that's one of the things where if it's already slippery to begin with, that could almost be to our advantage, even though he's effective when he runs. If he runs 15 yards down the field and loses the ball half the time, okay, let's go. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I prefer they play their backups because I mean, to me at this point of the year, I'm not looking for moral victories. I want the Dolphins to simply win the football game and go 11-5. The other side of that is if the Bills play their backups, and they've got strong backups, they've got a strong 53-man roster. That's why they're one of the best teams in the league. If the Dolphins were to lose to the Bills backups to miss the playoffs, ooh, that would be a tough pill to swallow.
It would, but at that point, we don't deserve it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, I mean, there are a few healthy things we can do, and I just want to table a little bit of the Bills thing for a minute because there's a lot of folks talking about it in chat. You and I were talking about this ahead of the show before we got on the air here. Dolphins have that number 3 pick, right? Let's just call it that for right now. That's the big talk. Everybody's curious and excited and fighting over what they would do with it. Kat, well, you are the Dolphins sitting there at number 3. What would you do?
Yeah. Well, before I get to that, if everyone's listening in chat, the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl. I'm staying with that prediction, just to piss everybody off. Anyway, no, I'm just. I do think that, but look, we love all you. Number
Imagine.
3 at number 3, typically I cringe when anyone predicts a trade down because what I always say is that you want to trade down for the same reason that nobody will probably trade up. I think if the Dolphins get the 3rd pick in this scenario, this is a different story because we saw Justin Fields last night with throw 6 touchdowns. So you're going to have Trevor Lawrence go 1, 2nd overall. It has got to be a quarterback, and it's got to be Justin Fields. If not, it's going to be Zach Wilson. Then from that point, it is really important that Fields and Wilson have a great offseason and the Dolphins have that 3rd pick. Because if that's the case, you look at what could be below them in a trade down. If Washington loses to Philadelphia this weekend, they're going to be picking in the top 9. You could have the Dolphins picking 3rd with 2 quarterbacks off the board. The Dolphins picking 3rd, Falcons 4th, Lions 6th, Panthers 7th, Broncos 8th, and Washington 9th. You're talking about 5 of the next 6 teams who either desperately need a quarterback or are hungry for one, and there may be one elite quarterback left on the board. That would be phenomenal. And my preference would be you trade down 1 pick, you get an extra 1st rounder or a 2nd rounder, and you take the guy that you wanted anyway. My overall number 1 player on my board is Penny Sewell still.
For me, I'm willing to trade down. I think the Jets, and it depends on who their coach is, but I think that the Jets may be more in play for Penei Sewell than a lot of folks think they are. Get that pair of bookend tackles that keep Darnold upright and try to go from there. He's got the skill set, and I know it's the big tease we had with Tannehill in Miami. But again, you get him the right coach, and you get him a pair of bookend tackles that can keep him upright and keep Frank Gore rocking out his 3.5 yards per carry, 4 yards per carry. It could be a scenario. But whether the Jets go quarterback or offensive tackle, I think Austin Jackson's going to develop to not Penei Sewell level, but we've got him locked up for 4, maybe 5 years. And I think he's going to be very good, as much crap as I've given the guy this year. And yeah, I do think you could move him around, but we've got 3 rookies starting on that line. We've got guys under contract. And as much as I'm a front 7 guy, as much as you and I have argued when I want to draft a lineman in the first round before, and I would not be upset if they drafted Penei Sewell, if he's still on the board, you've got teams like the Bengals that you can't tell me the Bengals don't want to go offensive line and go offensive line hard after what happened to their rookie chess piece in Joe Burrow. You've also
Well,
got guys like Justin Fields that may be there. You've got Zach Wilson that may be there. And you've got teams like the Falcons right behind you that may want to secure their guy. You've got teams like the Lions that don't have Stafford under contract for next year and are going to have a new head coach that probably wants his guy. You've got teams like the Redskins that, have a one-legged quarterback, cut their starting quarterback, and whoever the hell else they've got at this point. You've got a number of teams that are going to want to come up. And just for fun, I went ahead and did something from draft day here. And I don't care if you want a wide receiver. I don't care if you want an offensive lineman. Miami's linebacking core is decimated in free agency this offseason. And Micah Parsons is such a switchblade that Flores and Boyer could have a field day with. And it makes so much sense to me to go that route. And I know I talked about some of the guys that are going to be there from 5 to 10 earlier that could help this team and build the draft capital that maybe if they're really sold on a guy like Devontae Smith, they can trade a portion of that draft capital to come back up a little bit and grab Smith or Waddle or one of those guys.
Yeah, there's so many trade down possibilities. I think at this point, I would almost be underwhelmed if the board is like how it is, and you've got Lawrence Fields and Zach Wilson at the top, who I think they're going to gravitate up up the board and be the top 3 picks or top 5 picks. That it would almost be underwhelming if the Dolphins didn't trade down. And but one thing I'm not doing though is I'm not moving from 3 to 6 or 7, getting another second rounder and then taking the best player. I don't think that's worth it. I think the Dolphins need to get a star player here. But the other side of that, and the reason I bring up Washington, is you look back at the 2012 draft, Washington traded to go from 6 to 2. They traded 3 first rounders to swap from 6 to 2. So overall 4 first rounders to make that swap. And Washington could say, okay, if we get a Zach Wilson or a Justin Fields into play with the defense they have, they're going to control the NFC East here over the next 3 to 5 years. That's a move that's very much in Washington's wheelhouse.
It is. And sorry, I've got to ask you this because we're getting asked it, and it's a horrible question. And it was partially spurred by Omar and Armando and their X's and BS.
I'm with it.
Segment. I've got to set the table because it's
don't need to. What do you got?
You had to ask Capellas. Being that Omar and Armando have broken numerous reports of X wanting more money, do you guys give the Jets X and our second first round pick to try to move up and take the second overall pick and potentially have the second and third pick back to back in this draft?
No, yeah, it's not going to happen. Nothing I even care to spend airtime on. Sorry.
Well, what I will say is what I would do here is we have, I think, 9th or 10th most cap space in the NFL. Give X some more money.
No, I'm not in for that either. He's one of the highest paid cornerbacks in the league.
Not a lot. I mean,
Howard is fine. He's well paid. He's not going anywhere. He's 28 years old. He's in the prime of his career. As far as the Jets are concerned, going back to something you said there, I would be shocked if they don't go with quarterback. Something happened with Justin Fields and Zach Wilson through the pre-draft process. Because Adam Gase is gone, they're going to fire him. They're going to bring in a new coach, and that coach is going to want to have his starting quarterback. And I understand what you're saying on the Jets, and the tackle spots. Yeah, you could draft Sewell, you could kick Mekhi Becton to right tackle, but then you're protecting a quarterback that's been terrible for 3 years. I mean, Sam Darnold in his first 3 years has almost more turnovers than touchdowns. It's not like, okay, he was great for half a year and then the wheels fell off and they can get that back. He's been terrible for 3 years. And I'll go a step further. I don't think he was very good at his last year at USC.
Yeah, and we'll have time to debate this one, and I think you and I are going to debate this one a lot this offseason. But
Right.
I do think that there's a lot more possibility that the Jets go with that tackle position and still eyeball Darnold, or maybe even bring in Stafford for a year and punt it back a little bit for the quarterback position, or think that they can get a guy like Wilson or something like that with their second overall or their second draft pick in the first round, because they do have two in the first round.
Yeah, we'll talk about that another time. I'd be shocked if they don't go quarterback at 2, and quarterback is the highest rated position there on the board, especially after what Fields did here last night. But anyway, getting back to the game, the Dolphins defense is going to go up against Josh Allen here, and unfortunately, he's had a phenomenal season. I mean, we're talking MVP candidate, over 4,300 yards passing, over 400 yards rushing, 43 touchdowns, 9 interceptions on a team that's averaging almost 28 points a game. And offensively, over the last 7 games, they're averaging over 35 points a game. So phenomenal work by Josh Allen, unfortunately. Stephon Diggs, 120 catches for 1,460 yards on the year. He's also in that MVP conversation. No, I don't think Allen or Diggs will get the MVP. I think that'll go to Mahomes or Rodgers, but that bears watching, because if you take Allen and Diggs out of the lineup alone, that really becomes a game the Dolphins can win.
It does, and Cole Beasley's already out of the lineup,
Yeah.
and we will see. And one big X factor here is going to be about a 5-degree swing temperature wise, which is really going to dictate a lot of what happens in this game from both teams on both sides. I think the sloppier it is, the less likely we see the Bills starters. And believe it or not, as weird as it sounds, I kind of feel like that crappy weather almost favors Miami's offense more than it does the Bills' offense. It's crappy weather neutralizes speed receivers more than anything, and that's even against bad defenses. And it's with Miami having some misdirection items at their disposal. And one of the things I like about Fitzpatrick being out, as goofy as it sounds, is I think we see a little bit more of that Lynn Bowden, Malcolm Perry, wildcat-y type formation, which has a lot of misdirection to it. And in that scenario, the more you're putting a defense on their heels in the mud, in the snow, the more the advantage swings over to that offense as far as that goes. And Miami already plays in a 10-yard box with Chan Gailey calling plays for Tua. So,
see, I think that if Josh Allen stays in the game, then it significantly benefits Buffalo. But if he's not, then I think it benefits Miami, because Josh Allen has one of the strongest arms in the league. And that's why in Buffalo, it works so well for them too. He's completed almost 70% of his passes this year. He's just been fantastic. And then, so I think it benefits them. And they've got, I disagree. I think they've got a lot of possession receivers with Diggs and John Brown and Dawson Knox and those types of guys. I don't see a lot of speed receivers, which also actually benefits the Dolphins. But if they've got Matt Barkley against Tua, obviously it's advantage Dolphins. And I think you're right on that you could put Malcolm Perry, Lynn Bowden in there, give them some looks. And then it could become a Myles Gaskin versus Devin Singletary and Zach Moss game at running back. And Myles Gaskin's on fire. I mean, you look at the last 2 games now, against the Bengals, he had 141 total yards. And then this past game against the Raiders had over 160 total yards. He has 895 total yards on the season in 9 games. He needs 105 total yards in this to get to 1,010 games.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a Gaskin fan. I have been. It's I do want to amend the running back position a little bit this offseason, but he is doing a great job. And the thing I like about Gaskin's build and style is the only thing that terrifies me with him is running between the tackles. And like I said, in those slippery, snowy, muddy games, he's not going to take as big a hits most of the time running between the tackles as he would in a clear weather normal game. So yeah, no, I think Gaskins could tear things up, especially if the defense is having to account for all of the players potentially carrying the ball on all sides of the field. And the cool thing here is I think we get Solomon Kinley back. And you get a big fire plug like him in the middle, pushing in the run game again, it's only going to help.
The Dolphins are a lot healthier this week than they've been the last few weeks. They're also supposed to get Devontae Parker back. Hopefully, it's a hamstring issue, and a lot of times if he's iffy for the game, he does. He's not on. We don't see him on the field or see him on the field much. But Parker, Gesicki is another week healthier. Jakeem Grant, shockingly, may play in this game. He played on a practiced on a limited basis. And like you said, you're going to get Solomon Kinley back. Eric Flowers is another week healthier. Landon Roberts did go on IR, but I don't think that's going to have a huge impact in a game like this. Um, uh, but yeah, I mean, they've got everybody pretty much lined up here for this game. They didn't get Preston Williams back. They didn't elevate him from IR, which was rumored loosely for a while. But yeah, I mean, I do think that there's a potential to at least spread the field with some weapons here.
There is, and again, that's. I really, really hope Miami does some Wildcat. I hope they do some of those jet sweeps, especially if they get Jakeem back. I don't necessarily love Jakeem's hands in the rain. There have been some struggles in dry weather at times this year. But again, it's Solomon Kinley pushing up the middle is a huge, huge factor for this team if they can get him back. I'd almost argue that he's the most important of the players that may or may not play this weekend to come back based on the weather reports.
Yeah, and up the middle, the Bills are a little bit. I mean, they're good, but they're undersized a little bit with Ed Oliver, Quentin Jefferson. So that makes Solomon Kindley's size even more important here in this game. And yeah, in run defense, I mean, the Bills are averaging, allowing to opposing lead running backs almost 5 yards a carry on the year. I mean, Sony Michel had 10 carries for 69 yards against him. They've allowed 100-yard games to Darrell Henderson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Damian Harris, Kenyon Drake, and with Myles Gaskin on fire, could be a good game for him. And I agree with you. Between the tackles, I do worry about Gaskin's durability, even though he has great vision. And when it comes to the receiving game, Gaskin gets it. And that's why if you pair him with a bigger running back this offseason and you knock everybody down a peg, Gaskin's your second guy, Salvan Ahmed your third or fourth guy, makes that running back room, takes it from a C to possibly an A. So we'll take a look at that here this offseason. Another thing too, Paul, is, I talked about how Josh Allen has destroyed the Dolphins the last 4 times they've played. 12 touchdowns, 2 on the ground as well, and 1 interception. But even this year, when the Bills won 31-28, the Dolphins lost Byron Jones on the second play of the game. Noah Igbenogany comes in, gets destroyed, 8 catches for 153 yards and a touchdown by Stephon Diggs. So I am looking forward to what happens if Josh Allen goes up against Byron Jones and Xavier Howard. I'm not saying the Dolphins cornerbacks are going to win that matchup, but that's going to give us a good temperature on how this matchup may go between Josh Allen and the Dolphins defense over the next few years.
Yeah, and you can't tell me that not only the fact that it was after Byron Jones went out in the first matchup, you got to look back at Byron Jones last week and the fact that he really got screwed almost on back-to-back plays in what could have, should have been called pass interference on the offense on the first touchdown. and then it definitely should have been if the second one was called pass interference on Byron in what set the Raiders up for that go ahead score. You can't tell me Byron's not coming out with a chip on his shoulder this week. He did say in his media availability, I need to play better. No matter the refs called what they called, I need to play better and execute better. You cannot tell me that that man is not coming out ready to play this week.
My least favorite thing in professional football is pass interference rules. If I haven't said that, I'll say it over and over again. Uh, I think, look, Byron Jones did reach out and grab Aguilar once on that one. Little ticky tacky, but okay, I can see that being called. 49-yard penalty. 49-yard, half the football field of a penalty. You make it a 15-yard penalty. And then on the other side, I agree, 100% agree with you. On that 85-yard touchdown, when you take both hands and shove the cornerback, that's pass interference. Play is over. So what should happen in that scenario with offensive pass interference is you have an 85-yard penalty to even things out. Obviously, that's never going to happen. But yeah, and on that play too, on those two plays with Byron Jones, absolutely no pass rush. The Dolphins brought 3 on both plays. They have to get more pressure on whoever is playing quarterback this game. And getting Shaq Lawson back, who does a lot of the dirty work at defensive end, may help free that up a little bit more. But the Dolphins certainly have to come back with a pass rush to complement that secondary so that they go so that they're one together here against Josh Allen, because that's what's needed.
It is, and I'd argue that Shaq Lawson's probably the second most important player we might be getting back this week. And I hate to rank them that way, but we're talking about a mud, blood, and snow game against a division rival, and it's one that's going to be won and lost in those trenches. And Shaq Lawson, while he may not be packing a stat sheet this year, does a lot of those critical dirty work things that Miami needs in a game like this. And I look at guys like Van Ginkel. I need to see Agba start getting to the quarterback a little bit more again, like we saw earlier this year.
Yeah.
But it's and that push up the middle, that's a huge set the table thing that Miami needs to do in this game.
I agree. And yeah, Agba needs one more sack to get to 10. Xavier Howard needs one more interception to get to 10. So that's going to be my bold prediction of the game, that both players get to that spot. Xavier Howard pulls down his 10th pick, and Emmanuel Agba gets his 10th sack of the year. Paul, what's your bold prediction for this one?
I think this is the first time you've ever taken mine ahead of me.
Wow.
Well done. So I'm going to go with a different one. I'm going to go with, I think Byron Jones makes up for last week and gets his second pick of the season in this game. It may come off Matt Barkley, but it's still an interception, still an interception.
Yeah. And as far as the prediction's concerned, look, if I get the feeling, just a feeling, that the Bills aren't going to play their starters. That's I don't know anything. That's my feel. And the reason for that is because Sean McDermott really dodged that question this week. And maybe he would have anyway to keep things off. But on our segment with Nick Wooten from the Bills Wire, he told a story about how a couple years ago when McDermott was head coach that, he had Tyrod Taylor as, probably starting heading into that game. And everyone in the media around the building knew Tyrod Taylor could barely walk. And he kept that under wraps all week. And then Nathan Peterman started. So I respect that about McDermott. He's very good at lying to the media, which to me is one of the most critical things of being a head coach. So my point is that here, if the Bills rest their starters, I think the Dolphins will win. They'll get to 11-5. That's what I want to have happen here. But I don't think they let the Dolphins have this game, and they are just on fire. And if you're playing the Bills starters, there is not a tougher game or situation on the schedule than you can have than week 17 at Buffalo with everything on the line when it might be snowing. So unfortunately, I'm not only going to have the Bills winning 26-21, I'm going to have the Dolphins missing the playoffs.
That's not cool.
I mean, I'm just if you've got if anybody has coffee, I'm just pissing in it this morning for
Remember,
everybody. And I'm
folks,
not trying to, but I that's what I think is going to happen, unfortunately. Um,
it's at Brian Cat NFL on Twitter. If you want to give him some feedback on that one,
go for it. Bring it.
I know your grumpy ass loves it. And really, actually, speaking of which, before I give my game prediction here, make sure you guys are clicking the like button. Make sure you guys are subscribing. We really appreciate all the follows we've been getting lately, all the comments we've been getting. Give us your feedback down there. Loving chatting with you guys in the chat as well while we're on the air here. For me, I've got Miami making the playoffs here, and not based on a loss from the others. And Axe, I do agree. I think they will too. But it's I've got Miami winning with a very similar score here. It's 27-21 Dolphins. I think the Bills do rest their starters. I think Matt Barkley turns the ball over a few times. I do think Sean McDermott rests them, not only because of his history, but also because he's already down Cole Beasley possibly for next week. He just wants to get through this game and get to those playoffs. And, he's never going to admit that. Yeah, he wants to win. You want to win no matter what. Even in a game you know you're going to lose. You want to win. If you don't, you should hang it up and walk the hell away from the game. But I think they rest it. I don't think Matt Barkley is anywhere close to Josh Allen level. Stephon Diggs, as you pointed out earlier, sitting would be huge against the Dolphins here. So
Yeah. And
27-21, Miami, playoffs, baby.
Diggs is leading the league in both catches with 120 and receiving yards with 1459. So I wonder if that factors in that they want him to lead the league in receiving. I don't think it will. That doesn't seem like it's in McDermott's character. As far as just resting your starters, I understand the Chiefs starting Chad Henne this weekend, which is shocking. Last week in week 17, Matt Moore starts. This week, Chad Henne starts for the Chiefs. Shocking. They have nothing to play for. They literally have nothing to play for. I get it. But what happens if the Steelers and Bills play in the AFC Championship game? Now Buffalo's going to Pittsburgh possibly, or vice versa. That's why would you pump the brakes on that? That never makes sense to me, but it is the reality right now, that the Bills may rest their starters and the Steelers are already going to. It's not something I'm in favor of as a typical rule, but it's going to have a big impact here on this game. So
So, Kat, real quick on that front, I normally fully agree with you on that. But home field this year is not home field that you would normally see. Given all the pandemic stuff, there's a very real possibility that it doesn't really matter where you play because you're not playing in front of that home field advantage aspect. Other than like, oh, I know where the bathroom is and there's nobody between me and it because we don't have fans here today. So it's less impactful this year than it is in most typical years.
I completely agree. If it's a home field advantage, it's very, very slightly. I'd say it's more from the aspect of you've scored. If you're the Bills, you've averaged over 35 points a game for the last 7 weeks. Why pump the brakes on that? How many times do we have to see teams go into the playoffs and shake off the rust in the first quarter? But that would benefit the Dolphins significantly, and we hope that happens. Paul, before we call it a day here, anything else that's jumped out from the chat?
Yeah, people want to know what we would do at the running back position this offseason since we talked so much about get a big back to compliment Gaskins. I'll let you go first.
My preference would be to find a way to draft Najee Harris, even if you have to overdraft him, because you pair that big back with Myles Gaskin, and wow, that could be not only incredible, but you've also got young legs at that spot too. How about you?
I would definitely try my little tail off to go after Najee Harris, but I would, if I miss on him, go after Ramondre Stevenson, a guy I've been talking about for a while that just went off this weekend for Oklahoma. But even if I draft Najee Harris, I might be willing to double down at the position. We all saw how the running back room can get devastated, and I do think I like Gaskin as that third down back. That's that change of pace, but I'm not going to preclude myself from getting a big 240 something pound running back that can average 10 yards per carry in a bowl game. I never stay away from it. I never shy away from it. I want a big back here. It's no secret. One of the guys I was pimping all off season was AJ Dillon last year, who, while he did get off to a little bit of a rough start, while he did miss over a month due to COVID protocols, is starting to take off for Green Bay in a situation that's going to let the guy walk that a lot of people want to sign in free agency, because he is starting to get that job done up there and get rolling for the pack. It's Miami needs a bruiser. I'm not normally a grab your typical guy, but he's a guy I need.
And Najee Harris also can be very effective in the passing game too.
Yeah.
And he's worked with Tua, and that's where I can see it having some additional benefit there. So that will do it for our breakdown of the Dolphins Bills game and the scenarios revolving around it. You can follow Paul and I on Twitter at Brian Cat NFL and fanatic_pick. We're on Facebook, Twitter,
Ooh, I think Cat just froze. If he did,